And this is different than anything, any clinic around.
Workouts that are tailored for her, and that really makes a difference.
Really personal. I've gotten way more mobile, stronger, flexible. Just everything just improves me to the next level.
Welcome to the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast, where we push sports performance and physical therapy to its apex. We change the game by bringing together the brightest minds in the field to offer best practices and question how things are done today. I'm your host, Mike Quintons, physical therapist and expert in sports orthopedics. I'm living my dream and opened a clinic that unites all elements of sports medicine under one roof to drive recovery and performance outcomes. What's up, Performance Therapy Nation? This is Mike Quintons, your host of the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Paul Kenny. Paul is a strength and conditioning coach and is the director at the Athletic Performance and co-owner at Marino Athletic Performance in Downingtown. Paul is a certified strength and conditioning coach that works primarily with athletes of all ages, from middle school through professional ranks. Paul's athletic background is in hockey, having played at the University of Rhode Island, then went on to work at for the Providence Bruins off ice, which is the AHL affiliate of the Boston Bruins. He worked with strength conditioning program there, as well as player development, and assisted the Boston Bruins organization. Paul graduated with a degree in kinesiology from University of Rhode Island. He's a certified strength conditioning specialist. He's a certified coach in speed and agility, sports nutrition, and weightlifting performance. Also the proud father to Nolan and Wyatt. And before we dive into this, I just want to thank our listeners for all the reviews, the subscriptions. It's booming right now, and I'm very appreciative of that. And I want the feedback, guys. Keep sending me the feedback on who you guys want to meet, what kind of information you want. And I think you guys are going to love today's guest. Paul's a good friend of mine. We both trained with Ken Clark, who is episode 2, season 1. Ken Clark has been a role model for each of us, and we've met through mutual athletes that Paul has trained, and I've had the pleasure of treating. And ironically, we ran into each other. Ken had it was a meeting for the athletic training club and kinesiology department over at Westchester, and we had communicated maybe a week or two before that about an athlete, and we both show up there unknowingly that, unbeknownst to us, that the other person was going to be there. So it was cool to do that. And yeah, man, you're in Downingtown, which is probably what, from Philly, 45 minutes, half hour?
Yeah, it's about 45 minutes. It's just on the outskirts, but heavily populated with athletes, doing well and going places.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about, and our listeners, about this facility that you're at now, what your role is here, co-owner and director of athletic performance.
Yeah, so Marino's Athletic Performance, commonly known as MAP, it's essentially a training program to improve your performance, keep you healthy, and help you achieve any goals you wish to, reach. Athletes of, swimmers, baseball players, field hockey, you name it. There's all sports in here training alongside one another, but a very common goal. The environment we create here is to get better, stay healthy, and, especially in times like now, adapt. So it's personally for me, I'm proud of the program, but I'm more proud of the athletes that come through it.
Well, especially everything you guys have been able to overcome this year with COVID and last year, 2020. And obviously plenty of challenges. We don't have to dive too deep into the weeds on COVID, because I feel like that gets some kind of airtime in every single one of our segments, but it's obviously relevant to where you are today. So touch base on what that's been like leading up to this point.
Yeah, so it kind of hit us, shut us down quick. And personally, to me, it was what do we do now? I don't sit and dwell on things. There was always, something we can be doing. So originally what we did was we rented out our equipment to all the athletes and clients and basically adapted to an online training program. I think I filmed about 400 videos in 2 days and was sore for 2 weeks, but got everything out there for the athletes, and we kept training. We weren't able to meet, but we were able to do it virtually, which was key. I think that people who sat there and waited thinking it was going to end in a week, that's when you got into trouble. So with this, COVID and everything going on, we actually developed a new branch of our training system. We developed an online training system that we still train some of our college athletes when they go back to school. Now, the ones that have, good gyms or, have the the tools available to them, they're training with their strength coaches there, which is awesome because they're getting better and then they're coming home and they're getting better. But for those that don't have it available, it was key for them. It was awesome that now we can still keep in touch and we can still keep them progressing and they're not just, sitting around doing nothing.
It's beautiful. I've noticed the same thing. I've spoken about it in previous podcasts where there were other PT organizations that shut down for a couple weeks voluntarily, essentially, for safety reasons or what have you. And I feel like they're the ones who kind of got a little bit left behind, or at least had to play some catch up when all this, when all the everything else, like for us, telehealth came out and so forth. And it seems like, you kind of had the right idea in your DNA where you just said, we got to go. We got to figure something out. You got to adapt. And I say this, I'm sure you feel the same way. We're better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the athletes, what is one of the primary concerns we have with them when it comes to training? A lot of them stop training when they go in season. So why would we stop working just because of a shutdown? Tell the athletes all the time, we preach to them, you got to maintain, you got to stay strong, you got to stay healthy. And it was kind of like a little off season. And those who sat around, trust me, they're behind the ball.
So you and I come from the same strength conditioning tree of Ken Clark. I went the PT route, and you went strength conditioning. So tell me about your experience with Ken and how that's molded you to kind of who you are today. What things have you taken from Ken?
The number one thing I take from Ken is speed. It's run fast. And it's funny, it all goes back to Summit Sports Training.
Amen.
The running treadmills that made us keel over into trash cans a few times. But
yeah, that's a fact.
But the man's a genius, and he just looks at things from a different lens. And I always say, if you're done learning, then you're not going to keep growing. And I'm so glad that every time he puts something out, it's something I can learn from. And his speed and biomechanics, and even the continuation with Lance Brooks now down in Texas at Southern Methodist, these two guys, along with Dr. Wayan, they're educating and actually helping me to back my case of why I have swimmers sprinting or I have, throwers sprinting. Everybody needs to be doing this, and that's got to be the number one with him.
The field has shifted. I mean, even in physical therapy, it's shifted so much to the cognitive understanding of the biomechanics and performance and how it relates to performance. And who does it better than Ken? And the continued learning, I'm with you 110%. I mean, he's at Westchester University. He could probably be anywhere he wants in the world. And they have a biomechanics lab that he loves and has, developed into what he has now. And he puts out research like all the time.
And imagine being at Westchester University as a track athlete, and he's a volunteer coach. You have the best speed expert in the United States as a volunteer coach for you.
It's wild.
That's awesome.
I was listening to Cressy's podcast the other week, and he name dropped Ken a few times, no big deal. But you're right. I mean, what a resource for you and I. It's been awesome, learning from him, and I tap into him all the time and touch base, and we're working with, a mutual athlete client. So he's a great resource to have, and I know how you feel about him. So tell me about your role now and what it was years ago. Obviously now co-owner, director. How's it developed? I mean, I feel like it's changed in the couple of years you and I have known each other.
Yeah, so when I came in, I walked into a company that, again, was doing great, had 200-plus adult clients and 9 athletes. Now, this is me coming down from Rhode Island, a New England kid up there, and I was training only athletes, and there might have been one Gen Pop client, like a dentist, who would come in, in Monday mornings. But they had a fully developed, adult program that was flourishing, but they didn't really have a structured athlete program. And that was kind of how I was brought in. It was something that was going to be, hey, you got the energy, this background, we're going to keep, Chris Marino, my partner, he educated me and he told me, I'll be a mentor for you, but I want you to build this how you see it. And basically from the small gym that I was working at in there, in Downingtown, we moved into a new facility that we're in now, and we've gone from 9 athletes to close to 300. And it's really not changed my role. I still love being on the floor. I want to be on the floor every session. They actually have to pull me off the floor to get other things done. But I love being out there. I love the energy from the athletes. And the most important thing that we did early on was we developed the culture. We got rid of actually 4 athletes, I think, in the first 2 weeks. They weren't showing up on time. They weren't willing to work. They were cutting their reps. And I couldn't build a program off of that. So everything I tell people when they come in for an assessment with me is every athlete you see in there chose to come back. They chose to be here, and they are willing to work. And that's why that environment, that's what built this program. It's not me. It's not my coaching staff. It's the athletes themselves that have put in the work, and they have improved the program year after year after year.
It's a symbiotic relationship, is what I would call it. You mentioned the word energy. It's Sunday morning. It's 9 a.m. And you're as giddy as I've ever seen you. Like it's Monday morning after 4 cups of coffee. So
Coffee helps. Coffee definitely helps.
The caffeine helps, but like your energy is second to none, and it's contagious, is what it is. I'm sure you've heard that before, and I think your athletes respond to that, and I know you give them the credit like any good leader would. A great leader would, and I'm sure it's mutual because they feed off of that. So kudos to you. And going from you said 9 to 300.
Yeah,
that's wild. And how big was your space before this location? And how big is this location?
The back garage that I was in at the other location was probably 14 feet by 10 feet. Like it wasn't big. It was a small area. Actually, the funny story is the first athlete that I brought in was actually one of my good friends, Eric Canodal, who was a semi-professional hockey player.
Yeah.
He's 6'8". So like I bring him in and he looks at me and goes, "Paul, are you kidding me?"
Is this serious?
He couldn't do a box jump unless we went outside. So, but again, that's what developed, the program was we adapted. We did what we had to do and we got to where we are today, but we're not done. It's going to keep going.
What do you love most about what you're doing right now?
Personally, I love watching the progress. I love watching, a girl that I got in 9th grade who just wanted to make varsity volleyball, and now she's playing Division I. I love watching these athletes become something that they didn't think they could. And actually, yes, when I was younger, always being the smaller person, still the smaller person, I was 4'11" when I walked into high school. Everyone doubted me, and that's the one thing I always get across to these athletes. You have no idea what your capabilities are. You don't know what your roof is. Don't tell me, don't settle. We can set short-term goals, but don't leave those lofty goals out of the picture because you can get them. And some of the best things come from the athletes, though, when you just observe. Watching the D1 baseball player help the 12-year-old get a stability ball down and have a short 5-minute talk with them or, a little banter. That right there just made that kid's day. He went home and told his parents about it. Like, that's the family. That's it.
That's a culture is what you're building. And it's cool to see that. I've been fortunate enough to see it firsthand in our clinic. And it's special when those kids respond to that. And it's contagious. And when the older kids will help out and offer a couple of minutes to talk to some of the younger kids, I think it goes a long way. And like you said, observing, that's pretty neat to see. So, and that's based on what you've built, right? Because you're willing to go up to anybody and talk to them, and that opens up the door for them to do the same. What could you do without, like what in this business with dealing with people, what have you? What could you do without in a day-to-day basis?
I think the most difficult thing is trying to get through to some of the parents or athletes that think they have to specialize in sports at a young age. I think that there's a lot of educated parents out there, but you have to be pliable. You have to listen or talk with the professionals in the field. One of our rules here at MAP is we do not accept anyone who's in 7th grade or younger that doesn't play 2 sports.
Wow.
And we've had parents that are like, "But he's a baseball player. He's going to be a baseball player." And I sat there and I'm like, yes, but what do you do in baseball? You stand on 2 feet and do nothing for 90% of the time. I played the sport. I know what it is.
Right.
Parents need to understand that there is so much more research out there. Now, me in high school playing 5 sports as a senior, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have been doing that. I don't know how I made it from beginning to end.
Right.
But I just, became athletic because of it. And, that's one of the things I can definitely do without is just the understanding that there's more to learn on both sides of the equation.
The hyper focus on sports specialization right now in this area, I can only speak for this area, is frankly, it's absurd. It's overwhelming. It's in my opinion, it's slowing down the progress of athletes, and in fact, I think it's hurting them, which is, I'm sure you feel the same way. I think it's tough to watch, and you want to intervene, and obviously you have with this kind of a rule. That's awesome. By the way, I've never heard that before. If you're 7th grade or younger, you have to be playing at least 2 sports to be able to train here. I love that. We've had parents come in and say, well, Tommy's a goalie, so we're going to be working on goalie stuff in here, right? And Jordan, my strength conditioning coach, says all the time, he's like, no. Tommy's going to move better here. I don't care what sport he plays respectfully. Like that, let's talk about hockey. That's fine. But I'm not going to be giving him exercises to be a better goalie. I'm going to give him exercises and train him so he can move better.
And that's the key is like
He's doing enough specialized stuff.
I'm going to do something for Tommy that's going to open up so many more windows for him to get better. If I can get him moving in different planes and, adjusting, he's going to become a better goalie because of it.
I love it.
It's the Tommy program, not the goalie program.
Well, and it's refreshing to me to hear that, and that's no surprise coming from someone like you. But I've heard that more lately, that strength conditioning coaches, at least the ones I've had on the podcast, they want people to move better. They're not trying to make better baseball players or better goalies or better hockey players, what have you. They're trying to make better athletes. And then when you do that, you're going to have less risk of injury and better performance, in my opinion.
And you see it all the time, I'm sure.
Sure.
If you get someone who early specializes in baseball, they come in, they have no ankle stability, they have tight hamstrings, they have low back problems, they have, shoulder issues, elbow pain. You can almost like look at someone before you assess them and be like, I know exactly why you're here.
So your passion was, to my understanding, in PT, in physical therapy, when you were younger, having gone through an ACL injury. So I'm with you on that. Went through a couple of those myself. So tell me about how your transition to performance from, PT, like that mindset. Like, how did you decide which way to go?
So it all came down to my internship junior year of college, leading into my senior year. I stayed up in Rhode Island that summer. I did my PT internship at University Orthopedics with Dave Pizzullo.
That's awesome.
And basically, I kept getting these athletes that come through the door on crutches, immobilizing brace. They were already hurt. And one day I just looked at Dave and I said, Dave, how do I get before that? Like, I want to help these athletes get back on the field or back on the court, but how do I get before them getting hurt? And strength and conditioning wasn't a major. It wasn't like you just took it and that's what you were. You were a strength coach. You basically took physical therapy courses, exercise science, physiology, anatomy, and he said, you want to go into strength and conditioning or performance training with an idea of injury prevention. And that's what my program or my idea was built on. I wanted to build a program that would keep or reduce the risk of injuries in athletes. So it's not based off your 1-rep max back squat, bench press, deadlift. We do those exercises here, but the purpose is what matters. And so when I got out of PT internship and I went into my senior year, I started looking at, sports performance facilities. And that's where I got my first job at Northeast Sports Training under Mike Macchione. And Mike was this heavy, hard, lift heavy, move fast, and he was the Boston Bruins strength coach. And I kind of took his approach, came back here, met my partner now, Chris, who had the adult population, and he just slowed me down a little bit. He basically just perfected the craft and showed me how to utilize a physical therapy-esque approach in my sports training program.
That's pretty cool. So strength conditioning's changed so much over the last several years, and that's you've kind of touched base on that a little bit. How do you disassociate or associate the two with what you do now and how much strength conditioning's changed, right? Like, how do the two worlds come together, and how much strength conditioning changed to adapt some of the like we talked about off air, some of the mobility or maybe rehab type of exercises, prehab type stuff that you do before your training?
I think if I look back at when I was training as an athlete, it was all sagittal plane, get heavier weights every week in your hands and get stronger. And guess what? It worked. With young athletes, it works. But I think the new era of the prehab, so to call it, exercises is before you do a deadlift, can you, activate your psoas, before your rectus spinae, before you do a squat, can you get your adductors fired up? Like little things that are tweaked before a movement or before a lift, just so that it's working properly. So if I see someone squatting and they're shifting into their right leg every time they go to stand up, maybe I put them down on their left side, they do a side bridge, and I just press on their hip to get that glute to fire. And guess what? Now they're squatting fine. That never would have happened 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, we didn't do that stuff when I was in high school training, even with Ken. I mean, Ken was more speed-based and put together a program for us that we would do on our own. But that type of attention to detail just didn't happen as much. So, all right. So how does the relationship between you and a PT go south? How does it, like, what can a PT do or the strength conditioning coach do that would make it go south, in your opinion?
Lack of trust. I think that, sometimes people judge strength coaches as macho and some people judge PTs as too medical. And I've learned in the last couple of years that just calling and reaching out and getting a conversation goes a long way. That's how we met. And it's one of those things where, I just reached out to a PT the other day, and you could tell, very skeptical of his athlete whose ACL recovery wants to come in and train. But then I basically talked to him, brought him in, showed him how we do things, and he's like, "Oh, this isn't like a meathead gym." But that's the perception. There's a lack of trust between the two, and that's when it can go south.
And how much do you deal with a prejudice already, like a premeditated prejudice against what you do? Do you feel like you're always fighting against that?
Yeah, and that's why I don't call us a gym. I say we're a training facility. The word gym to me, it just goes back to the clanking of weights and, the heavy-ass movements. And personally, yeah, there are clanking of weights and heavy movements, but it's strategic down there. And unless you see it or you've been involved with it, you can't predetermine that it's not going to be that. So do your due diligence, reach out to the PT or reach out to the strength coach, because guess what? It's all about the athlete. It's not about you two. It's about getting that athlete better and getting them back on the field.
Hey, man, that's beyond refreshing, because you and I think a lot alike in terms of what we do. And I'm speaking for you. You could have done anything you wanted to do. You want to do sales, you could have done it. You want to, be getting into numbers with stock market, you could have done it. But there's something about the relationships that we build with our patients, clients, and communicating with other professionals for one common goal, to see, Lindsay sitting up front with an Ohio State hat on. Like that's freaking cool, man. That brings me more joy than anything else. And I see it in you.
Those college signing days, I got so upset I couldn't go to one this year. That's the bell of the ball right there. Watching that kid who put in all that work get to just finally sign it off.
So Paul is, for our listeners, Paul is at just about every signing day, if not all of them, with his, and I love it. I'm actually I'm like, damn, I want to do that. And he's wearing, he's sporting the gear. He's got the shirt or the hat on. He's with the parents and the athlete. And that just tells you how for them, Paul doesn't go out of his way to ask to be there. They ask Paul if Paul wants to be there. And for them to include Paul, where it's the parents and the athlete, and Paul in there, you're part of that circle of family. And that's, getting a little mushy on you. That's cool stuff, man. That's special.
That's the most important thing to me. Is I still remember 2 years ago taking my son Nolan when he was 1 year old to a Friday night football game. And after a touchdown throw, Will Howard comes jogging over the sidelines and gives Nolan a fist bump. And watching my son just take that in, he was, again, the marching band was way cooler than the football game for Nolan. but that fist bump from Will, it just shows you there's more to it than training.
There is. In the relationships we develop with our patients and our clients, athletes or not, is what's special about it, and I think that's, we're doing good. We're helping others, and I think in some ways we wish we had some more of that growing up. So what is the most common injury your athletes experience, whether it's from an overwork thing type of injury, or is it on the field or court?
I was thinking about this as we went over kind of just generally what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Overuse is the word that keeps coming to my head, and it can mean so many different things.
Sure.
You look at swimmers, and they swim 6,000 yards a day, 6 days a week. Yeah, their shoulders are going to be cranky. So that it's not an injury, but it's an overuse, bursitis or shoulder tendonitis, or any kind of frozen scap. Or you look at, I'm not going to call it the DA Academy because they do a great job with soccer athletes, but all these girls who are on the field 6 days a week, 11 months of the year, they have the worst hamstrings you'll ever see. And if it's not the hamstring getting hurt, it's the low back. So there's very common injuries that stem from what the athlete is or isn't doing. In here, it generally is the cranky shoulders and the tight hamstrings. Luckily for us, we haven't had a large case of ACL epidemics, but we've had a few of those that, contact landing on someone's leg, getting driven into, but that hasn't been the big thing. The big thing is overuse when these athletes don't understand they need to reduce doing the sport-specific stuff and actually dose their body with the opposite. So you take these soccer athletes, these girls, and they're sprinting tall all the time, maybe get their butt below their knees or maybe get them in positions they're not often in, and you're going to create a better human.
Well said. I find that a lot of my patients and their parents want diagnoses. They always want a diagnosis. Tell me, what's your diagnosis on this, Mike?
What's wrong with him?
What's wrong with him, right? And when I tell them, essentially it's mechanical. Like, okay, is there structurally, is there a strain to the rotator cuff, or is there a bursitis, or is there active inflammation at the labrum, or whatever else? Yeah, sure, we can talk about the structural, but it's all because of the mechanics. So if the mechanics aren't appropriate, if they're not activating the right musculature, or their form is inappropriate with the technique that they're using in playing their sport, or maybe it's as a result of the fatigue, their form is incorrect or inappropriate or not adequate, we have to address those deficiencies. So you can put whatever diagnosis you want on it. I could call it 5 different things, but I'm going to treat it the same way because the pecs are tight and the lower trap isn't turning on, and now the scap's swinging, and now you're having impingement at the supraspinatus or whatever else. So to me, it's it's overuse, inappropriate form, fatigue, and there's only so much you can do about it. Sometimes the right instruction is back off, mom.
Yeah, and
like maybe they're practicing 6 days a week isn't the best thing for him.
There was a baseball kid who came in and he saw 3 doctors. He went to 2 physical therapists, or I don't know what it was he went to, because they clearly should have shored this up. But basically, his shoulder, his scap just wasn't sliding. There was a delay. And he thought he was broken. He would never pitch again. I think 2 weeks into training, just by doing some serratus activation and some movement drills, I told him, I said, it's like a door closing where the hinge just isn't properly secured. It's clicking or it's hitting on the wall somewhere every single day. Yep. And over time, it's going to get you. So it got you. Let's just fix the door. Let's just, reconnect that and watch. It's grooving now. It's perfect. And the kid hasn't had problems. And he thinks I'm a magician. I'm like, no, this is just biomechanics. This is the human body. If it's not working properly, things are going to go wrong in other areas.
Well, your understanding of the anatomy and how it works and the physiology behind it is what's special and unique. So which kind of leads me to my next question. Over the last 5 years, what are you doing that is different now that you weren't doing 5 years ago?
Man, 5 years ago, I think I was sprinting kids through a wall till they threw up all over the gym.
Because that's what we did.
Oh, my God. Yeah, exactly. And then that's kind of the worst way to look at it, but I was training them like I trained. And it worked for a few of them, yeah, because they were specimen athletes. They were going to get better anyway. But conditioning has really changed. I think looking at all the research and all the studies, and sometimes even looking at players who are still playing their sport 4 days a week, don't condition in the gym. Don't feel like you have to hop on the assault bike and kill yourself because the other athlete is. I think that my idea of conditioning has truly taken a turn because I have implemented more speed training and longer recoveries. And I thought, man, if these kids aren't getting 8 exercises done in 45 minutes, they're not getting a good workout. That's not the case. I started looking at the gym, and I looked at my slowest workout athletes. They were the strongest kids in the gym. The ones who sat there between sets and they just rested, they were the strongest, most powerful, fastest athletes. So I'm like, man, I've been all over these kids. I've been telling them, you got to move, you got to go faster. Maybe this recovery thing, there's something to it.
So tell me about your assessment. Has that changed?
Yeah, with my assessment, there's, I'm doing a functional movement screen like I've always done.
Love it.
I'm doing some, combine testing like a vertical jump, long jump, 5-10-5. I stopped doing a 300-yard shuttle because I figure anaerobic capacity we can test during a session. Also, these kids are walking in the door and they're being thrown 20 different things. There's nothing worse than ending it with some kind of,
conditioning,
oh
grueling
my God,
conditioning drill like a 300.
Yeah, so
25 and back on the 300.
Yep, 11 turns.
That's the worst.
Yeah, so I sat there and I was like, my assessment process has been less about the physical quality of the athlete and trying to get their vertical better and trying to get their 5-10-5 better. Yes, those are going to be things that are going to come from it. But the most important thing is, how do they move? Do they have any injuries? And what exercises are best for them? And that's been the key now. It's just, I went from a purely athletic performance assessment to a movement screen.
All right, so your movement screen is helping you to identify where the deficiencies are in their quality of movement. I love it. How much do you have an internal struggle with? But I need to show that their performance is better, right? Like their vert went up 5 inches.
Will the parents care if they went from a 1 to a 3 on the functional movement score system? No. But did their vertical jump go up 1.5 inches?
Right,
yes.
Sure.
So you have to also play to who you're talking to. And the athlete who comes in injured and their parents like, we just want them to be healthy, they really don't care about the vertical.
Sure.
You get the 12-year-old who's fully healthy, rubber band, just wants to move. That's the parent and the kid who want to see the actual 20-yard dash improve.
Right. So you can focus on both. And if I'm interpreting this correctly, based on the needs of that individual, you're able to bias, what to focus on, or at least tap into that with them. Like Tommy, who's completely healthy, the 12-year-old has, his vert went up. You're able to tap into that when you're communicating with the parents and giving results of the performance or the training over the last several weeks. That's an interesting perspective, how you can kind of adapt to what the demand is of that athlete and parent and the sport even. So tell me how you manage volume. How do you manage volume for the overuse athlete, or the athlete that is more susceptible to overuse injuries?
The volume has to be dictated on what they're doing. They're not going to stop what they're doing. You have to alter it. So the strength coach who says, you're training with me 5 days a week all year round, that's pointless. You have to change for them because their sport is coming and it's going to do whatever it wants to do. So we ebb and flow. The one thing I get across to my athletes, though, is training is a year-round process. When you go up to 5 days a week of school soccer, maybe you're in the gym twice. When you go down to 3 times a week, maybe you're in the gym 3 times. When you're not playing soccer because there's ice on the ground, you can get in the gym 4 to 5 times. We ebb and flow with what you're doing because we just need to fill the buckets that aren't being utilized.
So that's a lot of communication, a lot of demand on communication there, because some of that changes week to week, especially around the holidays and stuff, which we just wrapped up, or they're home from winter break or what have you. So you have to spend a ton of time communicating with parents and athletes, right? Maybe just the athletes on what their demands are from their respective sport.
Yeah, it's a process that you have to start right from the beginning. I lay out these expectations right from the assessment. So say I have a baseball pitcher who's trained with me from November through February and March. He's going into season. I need to get him, sit down with me to explain to him, all right, you're going in season now. You're going to be pitching probably every 5th day. This is your workout structure. Day 0, pitch. Day 1, we hit your legs hard. We got to get you, recovering. Day 2, go out to play on the field, agility, speed, run around. Day 3, we can touch your upper body. Now you got a little bit more recovery. Your arm's feeling good. Day 4, just, long toss, whatever it is, or, you're out of practice. Day 5, you're back on the mound. Now that kid knows what I expect from him. There's no missing line of communication. It isn't, hey, you got to get in here in season. That kid doesn't know what that means. He might come once, twice. You have to explain it to them, have them in present to understand it, and there's no line of communication being missed. I can't remember off the top of my head what book it was, but the line of communication is actually 5 steps. It's I do, you watch, we do, you do, I watch, then you do. If you try to go from I do to you do, you're going to have doo-doo. Like, it's going to be terrible. Like, and I've done that with coaches.
That's your soundbite right there. That's perfect. Seriously, I love that.
But I've done it with coaches. I've thrown them to the wolves, and I'm pissed off. I'm like, why did they not do this? And it's my fault. It's not the coach. It's not my staff's fault. It's my fault. And it was an impactful book. And again, I can't remember what it was, but it really changed how I speak to athletes and to parents and to my coaches.
That's a special leadership quality, to be reflective on what your behaviors are that may be influencing the outcome of someone else's outcome. So tell me about your programming. How much of your programming of your athletes' sessions here are dictated by your programming, or is it your coaches do their own programming? To me, that is my interest in it, just to share with you, is newer in that, getting my CSCS and learning more about programming and periodization and progression and stuff. Frankly, we don't get enough of that in PT school. And my experience was the old school stuff that you and I did when we were younger, and playing football at Bloomsburg and doing, meathead sagittal plane lifts. And now, like, there's all these new types of programming and periodizations and West Side Barbell, all this stuff. How do you do? I'm just interested in how different people, train. So what have you seen to be successful, and what do you do?
So in general, the structure is basically when you come in, we're going to do a warm-up, some kind of speed work, some kind of jumping, some kind of med ball throws. Basically get the body moving athletically. Get power production. Get something that's going to elicit an elastic response and get the athletes ready to move. Then you go into your strength program, and then if you don't have sport, you can do conditioning. Now, in general, that's how it looks. How it has been different for me is I stopped looking at the body as muscle groups. When you do a squat, you're not just doing a quad exercise. You're doing a lower body exercise that's knee dominant. Every muscle's firing, even if it's just stabilizing or it's reciprocal inhibition and it's shutting off. Like, you're doing a movement Just figure out which muscle is being stressed more. So we went away from push-pull with the lower body, and we went knee-dominant, hip-dominant. And we went unilateral, bilateral. And we went hamstring isolation, quad isolation. We basically extracted out. Now, for the upper body, I feel that it works pretty well going push-pull. I think just dynamically it helps the body. But we got away from just, and this is probably opposite CSCS, but we got away from just that, generic programming that's just, do this first, do this second, do this third. Because if I told you you're doing a squat and it was a back squat 225, that's a heavy movement that should be in your A's. What if I told you you're doing a goblet squat with 45-pound dumbbell and a 5-second hold at the bottom? Completely different movement. What if I told you you're doing a goblet squat to a box jump? Now it's eliciting power. Should that be at the top? Like, you can't look at a squat as the main movement, or this athlete needs to deadlift, this athlete needs to bench. You have to look at the motion, the planes of motion, and how the body actually fires.
So when you say knee dominant, hip dominant, do you mean like squat, hinge, like a push, pull, press type concept?
Yeah, take a deadlift. Trap bar deadlift, more knee dominant. Yeah. Barbell deadlift, more hip dominant. It's just stressing the body different. But, coach, they're both deadlifts. They're completely different movements. Someone even called the trap bar deadlift like a push. Sure. And the barbell a pull. So you have to understand just how it affects the body. And personally, for me, it came a lot from training after sports. When I trained as an athlete in college, I just listened to whatever I was told and did it. After college, I started training, and I had to kind of make my own program up, and I learned a lot. I was like, man, putting a barbell deadlift with a split squat and a leg curl and a back squat on the same day really sucks.
And the speed of it, to me, that's probably what's changed the most, in my opinion, is the speed of which how you're performing the movement, right? So if you're doing squat with bands and it's barbell squat with bands, your speed is going to be much different than if you're doing, 315 for 3 on, with 2-minute break or 3-minute break in between.
If you dive into velocity-based training, this might be a 2-hour podcast in a second.
But it's interesting. It's changed. A hold at the bottom of a goblet squat changes the exercise completely than just doing goblet squats, where someone would say, well, you got 2 knees there. You're doing squat, back squat with a barbell and a goblet squat. It's the same thing. So they're not if the speed or the pace or the hold is different.
Yeah, it's kind of like understanding a purpose of a movement.
Sure.
So I try to tell my athletes, we're in an eccentric phase of your squat. We're lowering slow. If you say squat 10 times, then you're going to squat 10 times. It'll take 12 seconds, maybe 13 seconds. If I say squat 10 times and you're 5-second lower, 3-second hold, 1 up, you did a movement for 13 seconds. I did a movement for about 120 seconds. So it's a completely different motion.
Different load.
Yeah. Different effect on the body. Same movement. So
volume essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know this role much better than I do, but it's your resistance, your sets, and your reps, right? And then the time under load.
I would highlight the end there. I don't look at reps and sets as the total volume. Time under tension is the hypertrophy driver. So if you're looking to build muscle size, don't look at doing 3 sets of 10 on a dumbbell press. Look at doing 3 sets of 30 seconds or 40 seconds on a dumbbell press, because you're going to put more time under tension on that muscle, stress it, force it to grow, instead of just repping out 10 real quick.
And the phase that it's in too, right? If you do a squat and you stand, right, and you're not actually lowering down, but the time that you spend in extension where you're, not in the concentric or eccentric phase, more of like an isometric or isotonic phase, that's going to be a different load on those muscles than if you're emphasizing the eccentric component of the exercise or movement, and changes the exercise, and therefore your muscles respond and behave completely differently.
And that's the kind of difference I've seen from the college programs that have been sent home this year compared to 6 years, 7 years ago. The coaches are putting a lot more tempo in there, because I bet you their athletes weren't doing it exactly how they wanted. And it's awesome. It's the adaptation of the field. It's the growth. So
we spoke about this for a minute before, and I found this absolutely amazing. Shelly, you're going to like this. So you have the pleasure of working with collegiate athletes and this is for people who may not be from around here. Downingtown, so I'm a Delco kid, is now like the hub of like athletics, in my opinion. So Lindsay, I was over their place. I was treating Lindsay the one time. And they had said that they live in Downingtown. They said that East-West game is this weekend. I think it was like a Tuesday. It's this weekend. And I wasn't able to get a ticket. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it's already sold out. And I'm like, wait. I've been to that stadium. It's massive. Like the East-West stadium, like it's huge. How many people can fit there, you think?
I think it's 8,000 or 6,000.
Like,
it's huge.
Sold out on Tuesday. Like Texas, like state football type stuff. And ironically, the team I was coaching, we played Shanahan that weekend. So we were up here, and I stopped in at the Wawa to grab some energy drinks for the coaches. And it's like you would think you're in another world. Like you see blue and yellow everywhere, like painted. Like you would think it's like a state championship. It probably is taking that seriously. It's sold out by Tuesday. So this is what I'm getting at. This is the hub of athletics. In my opinion, this is where a lot of athletes will be coming out of. More athletes will be coming out of. Continue to come out of. So Paul doesn't have to. He can communicate with these strength conditioning coaches that come from these other schools that his athletes go to. So when they come home for winter break, Paul takes it upon himself to communicate with these coaches. Hey, do you want them doing my thing, or how do we modify? So, like, let me let you talk about that. What do those conversations consist of with strength conditioning coaches that you initiate?
Yeah, depending on the school, it's more of my call is to introduce myself for the freshmen that are going in there, help them get to know the athlete they're about to get, because that's one step I see missed often. Freshmen come in, and sometimes college coaches, because I used to work in a college environment, they just say, okay, freshman, you're going to go learn the lifts, go over here. But sometimes if you help the coach understand that they're going to get a freshman who's been training for 4+ years at a good facility, they can hop right in with the big group. But other than that, it's more so they have seen that athlete for the last 3 months, and they want to keep them improving. So when they come back, they're not behind. But we have to remember, there's two sides of the coin here when we both want to make the athlete better. So you have to be able to communicate and do what's best for the athlete, not for yourself. Some coaches call you up and they're like, okay, so she's going to do a back squat and she's going to do a single leg RDL. And I'll say, hey, when she does single leg RDLs here, it always hurt her back. It was always, torquing her weird. And he said, yeah, that happened here too. And I would offer a suggestion for a different exercise that didn't. And they'd be like, you know what, that's awesome, do that. Because again, remember, they have 400+ athletes they have to program for. They're not going individual one-to-one. Some of them they are, and that's great. But also remember that you play a vital role in helping them with that individualism. And, most coaches say, hey, you got this. Keep doing what you're doing. You got this. Don't worry about the team builder thing I sent home. Other coaches, they have to do that. They have to do my lift. And personally, I've only had 1 or 2 problems where it's come to that route, and I've had to reach out to the athlete and say, hey, you have to make a decision what you want to do. Because at the end of the day, I'm watching you lift. He's programming numbers, and you're not hitting the numbers he's programming, and you're still trying to go up. So there has to be communication to keep the athlete safe and help them with their performance. That's the goal. We always have to redirect our egos towards the athlete saying, this is for you. What do you want to do?
That's got to be a struggle, because their commitment obviously is to you, and hence why they're here. But they have the coach that they're with all the time back at school tell them, you got to do this, 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 and this, or what have you at these weights. And for strength conditioning, a lot of it is like premeditated, right? Like you're going to do 80% of your 1 rep max 5 times. Well, maybe Tommy didn't sleep so well last night, or maybe he was sick yesterday, and he's just not going to hit 80% of his 1 rep max for 5 times. But you're telling me there's no way around that. That's what they have to do. So do you think your athletes are getting the same degree of like an assessment that you offer when they're at school? Is that even possible? And with that in mind, how does that influence what you modify, if you modify?
I think that the athletes are getting the same level of care when they're there. And I think that it's important for the private sector coaches to explain to the athlete and build confidence in their coach at school before they go there. You have to make sure that athlete, hey, when you go to school, you trust that person who's telling you what to do. Because you can't be sitting in their ear saying, oh, they don't do it like we do. Don't do it that way. Because that's not going to help. Who dictates their playing time? Is it you back home 10
Right.
hours away? No. You have to help these athletes understand you can trust that person. Don't be afraid to communicate with them if something's wrong, though. You were just about to dive into the, Tommy not feeling well, didn't sleep well. That's the velocity-based approach. That bar is looking like it's moving really slow in that warm-up right there. Maybe that 5x5 at 85% isn't the best idea for today. I'm seeing that. Team Builder app isn't seeing that. So there's the trust. There's the college coach tells me, hey, you do what's best for the athlete, and we will.
That's cool. I think that's really special. That the tendency is to say that put your ego right in the middle of it and say, listen, I'm telling you this because I've known you longer and I've done this with you and that with you and blah, blah, blah. And that's not going to help that athlete when they go back to school. and you're not reinforcing any kind of trust there. So good for you taking that angle. I think that's also unique in the strength conditioning world and even PT. It's about, flexing and I know this much and, you should take my advice, as opposed to let's reinforce what's best for this individual here. Even if maybe you do strongly disagree with in my case, the physician or, the strength conditioning coach or what have you. So how do you see the two worlds coexisting, PT and strength conditioning? Do you feel like there's an overlap? Do you feel like they work better together if they're under the same roof? Obviously, communication's key. So what's an ideal situation for you?
I think that, physical therapy offers something that strength coaches don't need to dive into. And I can refer to us as performance coaches, but performance coaches offer something that PTs can focus more on. So most recently, I've spoken to a PT explaining what we have available, and he said, you just saved me 30 minutes. I've been spending so much time doing this stuff with her, and you can just do it on those other days. So now he can focus on the more important stuff for that, say, ACL recovery or that, ankle stability issue, the knee pain. He can do more specific stuff. The strength coach can offer an assisted kind of, process there. So that teamwork is going to be imperative. Guess what, athletes? I'm going to be honest with you. Injuries are going to happen. It's part of the game.
Sure.
You're playing a sport that you move as fast as possible, change direction as quick as possible, and hit people as hard as possible. You're going to get hurt, or, if you were like me, I thought I was bulletproof till 17 years old, and then I sustained an ACL injury, my first injury ever at 17. I thought, I trained. Well, you can't prevent a 220-pound kid from falling on the side of your leg when you're extending and pushing off.
Yep.
So things will happen. But both PT and strength coach or PT and performance coach can work together so that you're in your lane doing it right for the athlete. If you cross over and try to be a PT as a performance coach, you're going to fail because you're going to only do things half as well as you could on your end. PTs, if you're trying to do all strength training procedures and you're missing those small little tweaks in form or that band around the knees or that rooting in the foot, then they're not benefiting from your best. So be the best at what you can be at.
I advise all my PTs to look into the strength conditioning program that they're running, right? Like whether they're doing it remotely from school or they're coming into a facility like this. If we don't know what their volume is, how can we prescribe how much motor control they need? Maybe you're doing, a lot of the proprioceptive stuff here. Then I don't need to do that. You saved me 30 minutes. I can focus on doing mobility exercises, right? Or working on load under tension for a specific muscle group or what have you, depending on what you're doing with them the next day. So from my perspective, we have to understand what each other's doing. And there is some overlap in my opinion, motor control and coordination of a movement, activation of musculature or whatever. But if you're doing that, then I don't need to do it. I can work on other stuff with them. So maybe if there isn't as much of a focus on core stability, and we worked on this with a couple of our clients, then I can focus on that, and then you do whatever you feel like is best on that given day. So, but it comes down to communication in the end, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, communication and trust.
That's what.
And you don't talk.
Yeah,
if you have someone in PT and you're a strength coach and you have never spoken to their PT, then you're doing that athlete a disservice.
Well said. I amen. 110% agree. So anyone who's listening, I think we've talked about this, especially with Ken. A lot of my conversation with Ken was about communication, but you have to develop that trust with them. So take the time, block out time, communicate. You do a great job of that, and kudos to you for it because it's working. You've seen your clientele build. All right, I got a couple quick hitters for you. Let's do it.
Let's go.
All right, straight bar deadlift. Is it in your programming?
We talked about this. It depends. So yes, we do have straight bar deadlifts. Have they progressed from a kettlebell? Have they progressed from just a PVC RDL? Are they on elevation boxes? Are they pseudo sumo? There's a lot that goes into it. But yes, we do deadlift with barbells in this gym.
Okay. Back squat.
Yes.
Okay. Bench press.
Yes, depending. If you're a baseball player and you ask me to bench press, walk out the back door. I'm sorry. I got a Swiss bar in that gym. I got a half pad foam roller to put on your chest. You don't have to be a hero. I always tell baseball kids, if you get into a pissing contest with a football kid in the gym, hand him a baseball and stand 50 feet away. That ball is not landing in his hand. So don't think you have to lift like a football player if you're a baseball pitcher.
I love it. All right, I'm going to keep going with the quick hitters instead of commenting whenever you want. Can an 8th grader specialize and become a successful college athlete?
Oh, you just crossed my 7th grade.
Yeah, I threw a tweener in there, and that was already I wrote that down beforehand.
I think if they cross train properly, I think if they do something outside of their sport, like say they're a baseball player and they learn how to sprint, you don't have to do track, but learning how to sprint will make you a better base. So yeah, I'll say yes. It'll be a small percentage though.
Ill-advised, but
Yeah.
it's possible. Most overrated piece of equipment.
Man, can I say barbell? I'm trying to think about my gym. I'm trying to think about my gym right now. And what could I do without? And I think I could put a damn good program together without a barbell.
That's big, man. A barbell, huh?
I just
Good for
lost a
you.
lot of strength coach followers.
No. Listen, well, because you've adapted so many other ways where you don't need a barbell. I think that's what it is, right? Like you say that because you don't need a barbell to do the same movements that you do otherwise. You can replace it.
Yeah, I mean, if you tell me like, I don't know, like a glide disc, yeah, I could live without a glide disc. But like,
Sure.
we're talking about a big piece that I could make somebody strong as hell, keep them injury free, and they improve their performance. I could do it without a barbell.
I think a leg press is overrated.
Oh, machines. Did you see any machines at my side of the gym?
Listen,
There's no machines.
when we did the build out for my clinic, they were like, "Do you want an ultrasound machine?" I'm like, "What am I gonna do with an ultrasound machine? Costs $4,000. What? You want a leg press in here? No, I don't need a leg. What do I need a leg press for? And I need 1,845-pound plates. You know. All right. The best strength and conditioning coaches do this one thing right.
Consistency.
Would you rather coach strength and conditioning or speed training?
Speed training.
So strength training or speed training?
Speed training.
That's all Kenny Clark in you.
Yeah.
The fastest athletes do this better than the fastest athletes do this better than the fast athletes.
The ability to shut off muscles as fast as possible. Elasticity.
Elasticity. I like that.
I thought I was going to roll that word for a second there.
No, I mean, there's fascial planes and all that stuff, and I like studied that more
Oh,
recently.
wait.
than
For
probably
Ken,
other things.
for Ken,
Go ahead.
body stiffness.
But right,
Yeah.
and that's the fascial planes, right? So the logic is that fascia helps you to be more elastic and be more explosive. So why the heck am I, if Kevin Durant's on my table, why the heck am I beating the living hell out of his gastroc and out of his plantar fascia if he depends on that elasticity to be more explosive?
Actually,
right?
I have a quick story if I can go into that like a little. So I had a volleyball athlete, very good, played at Ithaca. She was going into her senior year. She had a 22-inch vertical. She was playing libero at this point in time because the other girls on her team were giants. But I had just listened to Tony Holler talk, and then I picked Ken's brain a little. All I changed in her program, because I looked at volleyball and I said, she doesn't have to sprint. She moves in a box. Like, she doesn't go anywhere. All I added to her program was twice a week, 10-yard dash, 20-yard dash. Maybe like a prowler push before to get a little post-activation kind of effect to it.
Yep.
Her vertical went up to 26 as a junior in college going into a senior. 4-inch improvement in 3 months.
Wow.
Her deadlift went up 45 pounds. Her squat went up 65 pounds.
And a physically mature person,
Yeah, physically
fine,
developed and has been a specimen of an athlete.
Yep.
All she did was start sprinting. Guess what happened the next year? Everybody started sprinting in this gym.
Sure.
It opened up a brand new kind of theory because, as Ken Clark says, there's nothing stronger that you can do in the gym that can match sprinting. There's nothing force application down. You're on the ground for 0.1 seconds for ground contact time at top speed. You're putting 3 to 4 times, probably 2 to 4 at the younger age, 2 to 4 times your body weight into the ground. So if you can squat 400 pounds, that's great if you're a 200-pound athlete. But if you can put 2 to 4 times your body weight in 0.1 seconds into the ground and absorb all that force through your body, how long does that 400-pound squat take to get from bottom to top?
All right.
Come on, like it was a game changer. That Tony Holler talk and then speaking with Ken was a game changer.
I think that about you because what's unique about you, Paul, is you want to study, you want to learn more, you're hungry to learn. This is more of a cognitive thing for you or a cerebral thing for you than it is anything else, in my opinion. And that's what's changing about the business and about the realm of sports performance. And you're leading it, dude. You're right up there. I think you have a super bright future. I've spoken to a lot of people in the area, and I'm fortunate enough to be, we're right around the same age, and to have the contacts I've had, and you're right up there, dude. Like way up there. So I think this is just the beginning for you, even though I walk in there and I'm all googly-eyed at this facility. But I think you're going to be doing big things here. So I'm looking forward to seeing you do that, man.
Hey,
proud of you.
Thank you for having me on, man. This has been awesome.
Of course, dude. This is an absolute pleasure. This is a long time coming. Please share with our audience how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, PaulKenny_performance. You can find me there. I try to post daily. Just
Great content.
information, anything to learn. And Actually, it helps because then my athletes watch it. And I don't have to explain too much in the gym.
Just follow me on Instagram. Check
Well,
out my posts.
like, why am I doing this movement? Go to November 10th. Just go look at that one. You'll learn. But that's basically the best way to contact me. You can message me there or email me at paulkenny.stc@gmail.com. And I answer all emails.
All right, that'll all be in the show notes, and you guys got to check this place out. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening to the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast. If you like this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It would mean so much to me if you could leave us a 5-star review so more listeners like you could get this important information. See you next time.